yourself searching through the ruins of your mind. The sunshine reminds you of concentrated sky.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Psychedelic here. And as promised, today's the day we're going to be discussing and talking about our debut album, Astral Yacht, on Funk Night Records. This officially came out October 10th of 2025. We had a very successful Bandcamp Friday with the pre-orders, so thank you everybody that supporting me and my buddy here. I really do appreciate it. You know who you are. And hopefully by the time you're seeing this, you've received your copies. I have to throw this in there because it's kind of what we're going through right now, but with the government shutdown and the tariffs, hopefully it arrives fairly soon for you and safe. Hopefully it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. I did have some overseas orders, which is kind of painful to pay for, but it's all covered thanks to you guys out there. A lot of it was covered by in-person sales that I've made here in town, and I'm just very thankful it all worked out. I think we should start with the origin story about, my love for music a little bit, and then kind of dive a little bit and hopefully not leave too many details out. There's lots of, this could be like a 3-4 part series if you wanted me to go that far, but I'm going to try to make it pretty concise and just kind of give you the finer details. So Astral Yacht, yeah. It's kind of like a dream come true sort of origin story, It's like, didn't really have a passion to press anything on vinyl, but I'm glad the opportunity arose and the right people, the right label found me. And if you've been watching this channel for 10 plus years, you'll know that I like music a little bit, You can kind of tell, right? I love the arts, I love films, but primarily the main source of not just entertainment, but just a love and desire of discovering the artistic value that music offers. And if you go back way early into my channel, I've been making vinyl videos for 10 plus years, but you go even further back, you'll see I have some, not so much garage band, but attic band videos I have posted where it was my band from high school. We played up in the drummer's attic. Even earlier than that, when I was 12, 13 years old, I picked up a guitar, bought what I could, first act from Walmart. And eventually the equipment just got even better and better over the years. And, I'm a pretty basic guy when it comes to equipment. I like my basic stuff and then just kind of like filter what I like and use the built-in effects to my use and just kind of find my own sound. But as far as like me playing guitar, I've never really been the one that's gotten really technical with the guitar. Like I can't do all this crazy scaling like some guitarists can, and just kind of gradually found that I have limitations and don't really play like every other guitarist does, learning tabs or reading music so much, music theory. It all just kind of pours out of me naturally, and I don't know, I think that's kind of the best gift for me is just like artistic expression, even if it's not learned, the correct way as through music theory, as I said. So me and my buddy here on this album, Jacob Pavlik, the fella I met in college while I was going to audio and recording school and been best friends ever since. We had some years where we were kind of like separated for a time or two. I would say about 2015 to 2020. It's kind of like a breakaway point. He moved out to Omaha for a while, and I was doing my own thing back in my hometown. And I think it was just kind of a period of us trying to figure out what we wanted to do after we graduated. And once 2020 came around with the pandemic and everything was going to hell for a minute, we reconnected and met up every once in a while in Omaha. and the connection just got stronger and stronger, even post-college. You know, our friendship has just gotten really tight the last couple years, and you know, I was just kind of throwing some projects out there and making my own musical ideas and demos. And as you may have witnessed here on my YouTube page, I probably threw out like 3 different full album uploads where I made this like fictitious one-man band called Astral Yacht. And that kind of leads us to April of 2024 when I released that 3rd upload. I got contacted by Misha Panflov, who was a part of this sound combo. And I actually owned one of his records prior to him contacting me, which was kind of crazy. Did not know he was a follower of the channel, but I have this album here en route. I think this came out in like 2017, I want to say, or at least this pressing did. And this is a repress. It's been repressed several times because this man's very good at what he does. It's always selling out. And to me, this kind of sounds like more like library music, kind of a throwback to that style, mixing jazz and kind of funky grooves in there. And definitely sounds like a library record you hear from like the mid-70s. It's super cool stuff. And so yeah, he contacted me and was like, hey, maybe you should get in touch with Funk Night Records. And this is on the Funk Night label. And he's kind of like the leading man on this label. He's released a ton of things on there. I'm actually lacking his other LP with the sound combo. The other one with the mountains and the clouds kind of collage picture on there. But yeah, if you haven't heard this, check this out. So I've always been aware of Funk Night and sort of their outlook, or kind of their palette of what they're working with. You know, it's a lot of throwbacks to soul and funk and naturally psychedelic in nature. And I was kind of like, well, am I a really good fit for the label? I didn't really know at the time. And turns out lately, even just before my release, there was a singer-songwriter, kind of psych folk artist that just released his own album. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm not too far off the path. And so eventually we got the ball rolling of April of 2024. Some of the songs on that Astral Yacht 3 that I uploaded, that 3rd one, are featured on this one. That'd be the tracks Follow the Constellation, Concentrated Skies, and Colors You've Never Seen. 3 of which were recorded very, very cheaply, like no money at all. Well, this whole thing was recorded with no money. As I keep stating, this was a no budget basis. Purely relied on the resources that we had already and just kind of mixed what we had. Recording off a MacBook Pro. And then eventually a Behringer mic came into the picture and hooked it into my mixer and just kind of just imagined all these types of different sounds and see what landed. So did it very cheaply. It may reflect on the quality of the record, but it's definitely not Abbey Road Studios, as I keep quoting. But this is, you know, still, I mean, just to have this pressed on vinyl, some of your own musical imagination come to life in this fashion, I guess it was good enough to satisfy the label. So we were very pleased and touched that, you know, we had this opportunity. We'll kind of dissect some of the tracks in a minute here. But Ethan is also kind of like the 3rd wheel, or kind of like the 3rd party of the group, where he helped me imagine it in his little apartment studio, which is just a few blocks away from me. And he just kind of really helped me balance all the frequencies properly and take a few things like instruments out that weren't necessarily needed, and just tried to really shape the picture that we were kind of going for. And Ethan, I actually met him at the Storm Cellar, that bar I was DJing at back in like 23, 24. A fun fact about him, he's actually legally blind. So you can imagine how heightened his senses are as a listener. And the funny thing is too, all 3 of us, me, Jacob, and Ethan, we all went to the same audio school and had the same teachers help us out with, you know, listening to things differently than just a common listener. And I thought maybe we could go through some of the credits here while I'm looking at this. So Mitch Masecki actually did the front artwork here, the front collage artwork. And I was kind of just throwing ideas at him, like saying that I want kind of a desert landscape and maybe some snowy mountains, all leading up to the space, like some kind of galaxy. And this is what he whipped up. He whipped up like 5 to 6 different images for me, and he kind of cut and pasted things from old magazines. And this really turned out and transferred really well onto the sleeve. And then Jacob, he actually did the kind of custom text there with the font. We were really trying to figure out what font would go best, and it kind of gives it kind of a cowboy western kind of feel, which we were kind of like thinking maybe we'd kind of go in that direction, but it never really did. There's like maybe one track on here that kind of goes into that field. And then Chad on the back, I don't know how you pronounce his last name. I've never asked him, but he's actually the owner of Lincoln Vintage Vinyl, and he helped out with the layout of the album cover itself. Helped with the spine and helped with the front image, kind of getting all the dimensions just right, because we had this this Excel spreadsheet or something similar in Microsoft 365, I think it's called. We had that layout sheet and just kind of like mapped out all the dimensions just properly, and turned out really well with the transfer. Seamus O'Hearn snapped some Polaroids. He snapped this Polaroid in Omaha at Memorial Park. And I'll be showing the Polaroids, by the way, in a minute. Probably near the end, show some of the extra accessories that came along with this. And then John Olson, he's a friend that I worked with not too long ago, and he did like some of the demonstration inserts that we're going to later use, and I'll share those in a moment, because this did include an insert, and he kind of helped out, scrub things away. And then this was all recorded in this living space. This pad is all recorded here. And then I just gave thanks to Misha at the bottom. And then so for credits that I play, so I do the voices, keyboards, lead rhythm guitars, bass guitar, drums, percussion, bells, strings, recorder, chimes. I put oscillators, but it was basically like a little rig on the sampler that Jacob had. Pedal effects, and then I was with Ethan during all the mixing processes. Lasted about like 8 to 9 weeks. We would meet up like every Wednesday or Sunday whenever it worked for us both. And then Jacob, I put voices that he did on here, but he's actually only on Radio Yacht. You can hear him laughing on that one. 12-string guitar, keyboards, bells, and then the sampler that he brought over, which was kind of responsible for a lot of the textural, atmospheric stuff that you hear in there. So, yeah, and the thing with this too, it's probably 70 to 80% me, and 30% Jacob, because he kind of latched on board to the project halfway through. As I mentioned previously, a lot of these tracks were recorded prior to the record contract, and some of these were solely recorded by me. So like I said, he did a lot more of the textural stuff, and he's more responsible for like the 3 transitional pieces. So while we're talking about that, let's just dive right into the tracks. We start off with Follow the Constellation. It's like a 4-minute instrumental kind of funk jam. The real inspiration behind that track was the track China by Electric Sandwich, that German band. I was kind of thinking, let's get like a repetitive, locked in kind of bass groove, and then just kind of bounce on top of that. And not that it's very similar, but it's that repetitive, hypnotic kind of bass line. And then I just threw some recorder over top of it, and everything you hear on that track is purely me on that one. Following with the second track, Dreamer, Jacob helped out with some 12-string guitar in the background, and I think that might be it for that track. He did a lot of more of the 12-string, and then the rest was me, including the vocals, which I kind of did this like nasally vocal styling on it. I probably could have done a different take on that one, to be honest, but I'm not really much of a vocalist, but I was like, well, we got to add some vocals. I'm certainly not no Barry Gibb or whatever mainstream artist you want to throw out there, but that leads us to the third track, the first interlude. And that was almost purely Jacob, except the drums. It's kind of like an electronic instrumental, leading up to maybe one of my favorite originals on here, Concentrated Skies. I got dueling vocals, so it's like 2 different vocal takes on left and right channel. And you got like a fuzz break on the left channel, and you got some piano work on the other side. The only moment Jacob's in that is like you can hear some textural electronic stuff very faintly in the background. Otherwise, the rest is me. Leading up to the second interlude, Galactic Remedy. Again, all Jacob, minus the drums. And then Short Circuit Mind is like the rocker on this one. And to be honest, it might be my least favorite. I kind of whipped that one up fairly quick. It was kind of one of those typical stream of consciousness kind of things where I just whipped up a riff and just wanted to see wherever it went I was going to be happy with. And I kind of wish I put some more effort into that one, maybe a couple dueling solos in that solo mix. But it is what it is. And you might also notice the vocals on that one are a little bit like buried in the mix, or a little bit like kind of meshing with all the sounds, and the fuzz is like right up front. That was totally deliberate. I kind of wanted the vocals to kind of bleed into like everything else that was going on. Maybe a little reminiscent of like the OCs perhaps, I was kind of going for. And then maybe my favorite track on here opens side 2. It's Deserted Route. Crazy story about that one. So I whipped that up one Friday afternoon. I still remember it was a Friday. I had went to Omaha and I picked up that Kraftwerk double LP, the first 2 albums as a twofer. And I was kind of like, well, that's kind of like inspiring me to do something like that, you know, on that Kraftwerk 2, that Cling Clang. I kind of wanted to do something a little similar where it was like a very steady, like motoric kind of rhythm to it. And then just layer over layer, different guitar delays, and just see where it went. And it just ended up turning into like a 3.5 minute space odyssey of sorts. And that is purely me on that one, Deserted Route. Really love where that track goes, and that's definitely where we want to go on this follow-up album. Lead us to the number 8 track, Colors You've Never Seen. So you may hear a lyric in there from me saying something like, last night I took a trip on LSD. And I'll tell you what, I actually ripped that line from an old song that was comped on the Fort Worth Teen Scene album. And if I can drop that sample in here, I can tell you exactly where I pinpointed it from.
Last night I took a trip on LSD. I wanted everyone to see me.
Maybe I'm letting on too much. Maybe I'm giving away my secret recipes a little bit, but I'm just being honest with you. That's where I ripped it from. We actually sped that track up, by the way, too. You'll hear that one on the original Astral Yacht 3 that I uploaded. Even though this one's a little more sped up in rhythm, I was kind of like, it's just a little too slow for me. Leading into Radio Yacht, which is probably the most experimental track on here. Heavy use of the sampler, feeding into this really like distorted wave of fuzz thrown at you, and introducing it with like, you are listening to the cosmic sounds from the yacht, with a radio voice overlapped. And yeah, that's the one where Jacob's laughing. And funny story with that, we were listening back to just some of the zany noises we were making, and we still had it on record. And I just remember, you know, leaving that in there, and I just was like, let's add a delay to his laugh and just see where it goes. And there's like 2 minutes worth of us just laughing at like some of the noises we made, and I was like, we gotta throw a little bit of that in there, like the fourth wall kind of breaking through. Leading us to probably what you want to call the quote-unquote hit single off of here, the track that we're pretty proud of, and it's called Chapel. Jacob and I are sharing very much the same contribution on that track. He started out with the 12-string riff, which is very like doused in this kind of shoegazy guitar tone, and it's probably the most dream poppy track that we ever made. And lyrically, you may have picked up on a lot of these tracks relate to space and, you know, earthly delights. A lot of it was kind of inspired by this old novelist that I was aware of, and kind of depicted some of the words and kind of switched some things around. So when you throw in Chapel, Deserted Route, Follow the Constellation, those are probably our strongest tracks, I would think. For a first-time listener, if you're interested in this LP, I would sample those out first. And then that concludes us with the instrumental jam called Misty Hollow. That's like the longest track on here, 8 minutes long, and this is all me on this one. Pretty experimental, again, kind of going back to those early 70s German space rock kind of scenes, you know, krautrock inspired. I just put like a drum track over it, and I just kind of jammed along, and this is the outcome. Yeah, very space heavy, very interstellar overdrive perhaps, but kind of has like a little jazz swing in the drums. And a little bit of MIDI keyboard on that one too, thanks to Ethan. He's got a MIDI keyboard, and we threw in a little space effect in the beginning and some wind effect at the end. And yeah, just kind of a way to conclude the album. Start to finish, we wanted to put a little bit of a conceptual flow to it. Having listened to the mix nearly thousands of times and having heard these songs thousands of times, I can often be the worst critic of my music. You know, I think we all can. So it's kind of hard to hear this with fresh ears now, but I will say, listening back to it, there's definitely some things I would love to change on this one, especially like some of the usage of the shakers that I use. On Follow the Constellation and Concentrated Skies, you'll hear it pretty prominent throughout, and I'm just kind of like listening back like, yeah, my ears aren't really digging that so much anymore, but yeah, I mean, there's little nitpicky things like that, of course. You always want to make it better. You always want to go back and improve it, but there gets to a certain stage where you can't really go back once you're in the mastering process. And some things just may stick out more later on than, say, in that moment. Oh, the name too. I never even got there yet. So my whole life I've just been throwing and mishmashing names together, and you know, ever since I was like 10 years old or something, always been jotting down different names on like notepads and just coming up with like these fictitious fan-fictional names. And one day I was just like throwing astral navigation or astral projection mixing with the word yacht. And to me, yacht is just such a strange word with that silent H. You know, it's just kind of like a weird mishmash, and it just, you know, it's unique. It just, you don't see those words attached to each other. So it's definitely not yacht rock. I'm sorry to disappoint all of you. Maybe you were expecting that, but just think about it as cruising up in space on a yacht. So I do have an open copy here, so you can kind of get a little, some of the more finer details looking at this. I did make the label on this, so it's like, begins with kind of a dark purple leading into black on the label. Kind of hard to see in the light. But I wish I spent a little more time designing this. I was kind of throwing it together pretty quickly. But you got the label and all the tracks, got the basic information on there. And then here's the insert that it came with. And it's a little different than the demos that we made, but this is like the proper insert. So the whole idea was to have two individual portraits on one side and then the two of us on the back here together. And we shot this one in Omaha, thanks to Seamus. This actually has some AI in the photo. So there's actually a light pole sticking out right there that we had scrubbed out. It kind of looks like we're entering the Matrix or something. Anyways, yeah, so this photo of me, this was taken like before I moved to Lincoln. You know, this is a few years old, but I was doing like different poses with my shaman outfit out in the woods, and just kind of like that one I used, you know, just kind of being like in touch with the earth, you know, planet Earth, and I just overlaid it with some ocean waves. And this is actually Jacob on this side. He took a selfie with his phone, and he actually painted all this later on, actually painted that on canvas. So pretty cool. And then I'll just show kind of some of the memorabilia, or whatever you want to call it. Here's the original Polaroids we took. Kind of has like a post-punk kind of vibe, right? I mean, you can definitely tell these were taken in the cold. The way these Polaroids came out, you know, that kind of dark green. We took this one in Lincoln, and that's on our main Bandcamp site page. And then this was just kind of like I'm not really a fan of this one. We just took a photo on the bench there. It's kind of hard to focus, but you can get the idea. But yeah, really love this first one though. It's got the natural scars from when it rolled out of the Polaroid camera. Then this is something I just whipped up on my own. This is kind of like a little layout design I made, you know, way before I got the dimensions to make one. So I just kind of made it into like a 45 sleeve. I was almost going to put the label down there, but I'm like, well, we got to go with like the Vertigo Swirl and Columbia, all those other artists all those other labels that fit theirs in the top left. Here's the original demo that John made. As you can see, there's the light pole, and it's a little more cheaper paper insert just for the demonstration. And then what else do we got here? We got some test pressings. We got these like back in August, I want to say. Got 10 test pressings, white labels. I think that's all I got. I thought I had a little more, but I think that's all I had. So yeah, if you haven't picked up on it, still got many copies available. We had 500 pressed at Archer Recording Pressing Plant in Detroit. And the label's also pressed out of Detroit, Funk Night Records. Check their catalog out. It's pretty nice, man. We're number 274 on the label. And as I kind of hinted towards as well in the beginning, we definitely have some ideas for like a follow-up album. We're just going to take a lot more patience, and we're going to kind of grow forward as we move along. And we already have like a whole conceptual layout as far as like how the album's going to flow, and I'm just going to kind of take our time with it. Unfortunately, Jacob moved back to his hometown, so he's like even further away from me than he was previously, you know, being an hour away in Omaha. Now it's more like, you know, almost 3.5 hours. So it's going to make it a little more difficult to hook up, but we got some ideas flowing, and I'm going to take our time with this next one. We're going to launch to space eventually and never drop down, and call for Major Tom perhaps. And if you've received your copy by the time you're seeing this, do not hesitate to give us honest feedback. We really would like to hear back from you. Let us know what we did, what you think of it. We're just small town kids in rural Nebraska. That was our upbringing, and we're not seeking fame. We're not going to be Taylor Swift level. We don't even want that. We just did it as a passion project, and hopefully inspired those to do the same. You know, I'd love to have like the whole world, you know, even common people love the idea of just making their own art and making their own music. And this is just my example, you know. This is me, talentless, psychedelic. You know, I'm pretty critical of myself sometimes. It took a lot of confidence to get this done, and very proud of my work, and just hopefully can just grow from here. So I think I'm just going to leave it at that. Hopefully I'm not leaving too much detail out. There's always more. They're all streaming on Bandcamp. All the tracks are streamable. And I do believe the Funk Night record label on YouTube has uploaded all the tracks as well for you to check out. So thanks again, and we will see you shortly.